I'm at a city park in Ludington, Michigan. I'm in a little area where they have some sculptures and stuff to honor veterans. Parking is free. It's right on the shore of Lake Michigan. And ultimately today, I'm planning to go out there and tour that lighthouse. Before heading out onto the pier, I took a little walk along the channel. One of the things I encountered along the channel was what is now the Port of Ludington Maritime Museum. It used to be the life-saving station. They have these little plaques to tell us what's going on. You can see here a picture of an earlier version of the life-saving station. And then up at the top it says, the stranding of the schooner barge J.H. Rudder off Ludington on Halloween in 1878 led to the establishment of Ludington's life-saving station. The crew of 8 and 36 longshoremen, hired to rearrange the grain cargo in preparation for the vessel's salvage, were saved by the heroic efforts of the Big Point Sable life-saving crew and Captain Frederick Kendrick of the government tug Colonel Graham. Here we have a little bit more modern picture of the life-saving station and some explanation about the boats they used. It says Great Britain's Royal National Lifeboat Institution, founded in 1824, and its self-righting and self-bailing lifeboats served as the model for the United States Life-Saving Service and its boats. If capsized, the boats could be righted by the crew using a metal bar running along the outside bottom of the vessel's keel. Water in the boat drained through tubes and valves in the hull. In 1934, the new station inherited 2 lifeboats from the old station, and over the next half-century would receive 6 more boats as older ones were retired. On my way back to the pier, I encountered another plaque that gives some history of the harbor that looks now like it's always been big and deep and accessible and no problem. But apparently, there's a little more history to it. It says, Pier Marquette Lake, with its connection via the Pier Marquette River to rich timberlands, was an ideal place to establish a sawmill. The first sawmill was built in 1849 at the site of today's municipal marina. Trees were felled inland, floated downriver to the mill, cut into lumber, and dried on the shores of Pier Marquette Lake before shipment. However, access to Lake Michigan via the Seton Creek outlet below was too small to allow entry by the large schooners needed to transport the product to market. Horse teams had to transport the lumber to the beach because the original outlet was too shallow for boat access. Then lumber was floated on rafts to schooners anchored offshore, an inefficient, difficult, and often dangerous process. Charles Mears, a Chicago lumberman, developed a new channel in 1860. He had recently leased a sawmill from James Ludington at the north end of Pier Marquette Lake and wished to make shipments more efficient. As he had done previously at Whitehall, Pentwater, Lincoln, and Hamlin, he filled in the small outlet and dug a ditch directly west of his mill through the narrow sandy peninsula. Dredged by the wash of a tug's propeller and bolstered by timbers, the new channel allowed schooners to enter Pier Marquette Lake. This attracted more businesses dependent on waterborne transportation and led to the harbor's commercial success. The $1 million harbor was completed in 1914, the result of a government movement to develop a harbor of refuge at Ludington. The work included dredging, wooden arrowhead-shaped breakwaters, seen in the chart below, and other improvements. A gala event, attended by 40,000 people above right, celebrated the commercial harbor, which would replace lumbering as Ludington's main industry. Ludington's North Breakwater Light was constructed in 1924 when the decaying breakwaters were rebuilt in concrete. 1,000-footers, like the Indiana Harbor, were able to access the Port of Ludington in 1975 after the completion of another $1 million project to deepen and widen the channel. And now it's time to head out on the pier to go to the lighthouse. Looks like it's going to be just over a half mile. And it costs $8 to make the climb. And be aware, you're allowed to climb it wearing shoes or barefoot, but not wearing flip-flops. They did have a special little place for me to leave my flip-flops while I climbed the tower barefoot. And now I'm at the tower. I've paid my $8. I left my flip-flops in the designated spot. And let's climb the tower.
Erected a small shaft at the base of the south pier while funding requests for a more substantial dwelling continued. The Ludington lake is not technically considered a lighthouse because a house was never attached to it. Contract united eventually
so, because the big three was all had to do, yes. Yeah, I haven't seen them. Usually you'll see one or two per day. But it's been those rough. Anyway, so the Coast Guard maintains this, and they have oriented it. You can see the screws on fire, the screws up. Compared to this one. Yeah, so this one is still right to the horizon. The one the building is. Okay.
See, practical math.
Yes, right, yeah, I know, you gotta do it. And if it's a clear day, which is kind of foggy, but you can see like 6 miles out, but not. And somebody yesterday said that we are getting the mist or the fog from a Sierra Desert on upper winds. They must have dust storm there. And so that's why we're doing water, the Muir State Park. And that was a Mr. Mears. He did it. He was also, and then if you go further south towards me, it's Mr. Ferry, Ferry.
Okay.
And they were all these guys that got the wood out of the woods. And so before this was built, then they could get that wood down the river, the huge logs, huge. But there'd be a ship out there, but they would have to unload it and then reload it on a raft to get it to the ship. So finally the government said, okay. And then they built the harbor and they dredged this because you can see that light, that's all the sand that comes in.
Yep.
And especially after a winter, it really, when I was here a couple years ago, the dredge machine was there, and I said, well, we're doing a 5-year dredge this time. And so I think they just went really deep. Anyway, so people in this area always say that this area built Chicago, because all those ships would take the lumber to Chicago.
Yeah.
Until they had the fire, and then they had to start all over. But anyway, when the Corps of Engineers was working on this, it tilted this way towards me. And they said, it's not going to fall in. And it would be big money to try to right it up. Because that's when they added, if you go around, you can see that it was supposed to be narrow. And then they added like a whole thing. Anyway, it's settled. And after doing all kinds of research, they said, no, it's not going to tip over. We're leaving it. So they're leaving it. And it's fine. And our little group takes care of the building, and the Coast Guard takes care of this.
So this light still works?
Oh yeah, every night, green, 3 seconds out and 3 off, and then that one is red. And the big ships don't need it because they have GPS, you know.
Right.
So it's more of a recreational thing. The Badger comes through every day. But the fishermen, the charter boats, all that, they know red, right returning, and green. So if they're between the two, they're not going to crash.
I'm surprised they let the public this close to
I know,
the
I
light.
am too. I am too. I was up here one time and these two children, young men, came and they had their little orange toolbox and then they changed the light no matter what, once a year.
Oh, okay.
Just because, I guess, for maintenance. So anyway, that's why you pay the $8, is that to keep the lights on, they have to repaint.
Sure.
This glass was really foggy or whatever, so they replaced the glass, and so every year, it's an old building.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. Yesterday I went through the one.
Oh, did
north
you?
of here,
Big
Saddle
Saddle?
Point. Yeah.
That's a mission to get there.
Yes.
Because I rode my bike usually I do 1 week a year, but this year it was 2 times because they need people. Anyway, and I'm from Holland, so I can do it. But the road, I thought, I can do it. I had my bike, but there are parts that were just too sandy.
Right,
I had to walk it.
Yep.
It was like, okay. And no matter what they do, every year they bulldoze it back, but that dune just...
Yep. The
whatever.
dunes move.
They do, and it's like nature will win.
That's right.
It always does.
And of course, no trip to Ludington is complete unless you drive over to check out where they load cars onto the car ferry that goes across Lake Michigan, and that boat is the Badger. Unfortunately, I wasn't there at the right time of the day to see the Badger, but I got to see the ramp where they load the cars on. This is another boat that's permanently docked at Ludington. It's another car ferry, except it's not used as a ferry anymore. Apparently it's just here now, used for parts. And this is the rear of the Spartan, where they used to load the cars. You can see weeds are growing up where they used to have the ramp to load the cars. You can also see dark clouds rolling in. A thunderstorm was rolling in, and so it's time to get back to the car and get back on the road.